philosophy student. So today I'll be presenting my project to develop an ontology of schizophrenia. So as you know, biomedicine is one of the most important application fields in the ontology research, but little research has been done on mental disease in biomedical ontologies. Then among various kinds of mental disease, schizophrenia has been a focus of attention among psychiatrists, neurologists, and philosophers. So against this background, the goal of my project is to develop an ontology of schizophrenia in accordance with basic formal ontology, and also the biomedical ontologies that are built in compliance with BFO, that is OGMUS, and MFO and mental disease ontology. So let me look quickly at these existing ontologies. So I'm assuming that you're already familiar with basic formal ontology BFO. It is an upper level ontology, that is, it gives a domain neutral representation of categories and the relations in reality, and it embodies the realist methodology according to which, roughly speaking, a scientifically informed ontology should represent the universals whose instances are known by the current best scientific finding. So the next, the ontology of the ontology of general medical science. OGMUS is the ontology of disease in general. Then OGMUS says a disease is a disposition, and the material basis of disease as a disposition is a disorder. A disorder is clinical abnormal, and notice that the notion of clinical abnormality is primitive in OGMUS, because what counts as clinical abnormal varies greatly from one medical field to another. Then, and of course, a disorder is a part of organism. A human being, for instance. And then OGMUS says the manifestation of a disorder is called a pathological process, and the realization of a disease is a disease cause, and finally the disease cause has as part a pathological process. So all this is a basic idea of OGMUS's view on disease. And then mental functioning ontology, MFO, is an ontology of mental functioning related entities in general, including mental processes such as cognitive processes and perception, and mental qualities such as intelligence. Now this is an overview of mental functioning ontology. Then, so let me focus on cognitive representation and behaving in inducing state. A cognitive representation is a representation that relates to our cognitive system, and behavior inducing state is a quality that triggers behavior. Now, given these two entities, a mental process is defined as a bodily process that generates, modifies, and sustains a cognitive representation and a behavior-inducing state. Now, in terms of mental process, we can define the disposition to be an agent of mental process. And finally, given this disposition, a mental functioning related anatomical structure is defined as an anatomical structure in which the disposition to be an agent of mental process inheres. So this is a general idea of mental functioning ontology. Now, so we have defined mental functioning related anatomical structure. So in terms of this, mental disease ontology gives a mental version of disorder. Then in terms of a mental disorder, mental disease ontology, MDO, gives a mental version of pathological process and the disease and the disease cause. And also mental disease, MDO defines the term manifestation of a mental disease, and the manifestation of a mental disease corresponds roughly to the symptoms of a mental disease in our ordinary discourse. Now, in now, so then since people with mental disease are likely to have some troubles with their social activities, MBO also defines interpersonal the term interpersonal behavior to capture the social dysfunction of people with mental disease. Now, the ontology of schizophrenia OS is based on these existing ontologies, so it is constructed using by protege, and it's implemented in R2. It has imported BFO2 and augments. It has about 30 related schizophrenia related classes. So it attempts to give texture and logical definitions for every class. I'll give you some examples. And it adheres the OBO foundering principles, such as the Aristotelian definition of a term, and it is based on primary materials on schizophrenia, like DSM-5. So DSM-5 is a guideline. So it gives a diagnosis criteria for mental disease, including schizophrenia, that is widely used in psychiatry. Now, so we have various existing definitions of schizophrenia. So, for instance, National Institute of Mental Health says schizophrenia is a chronic and severe disorder that affects how people thinks, feels, and acts. And Medical Encyclopedia's definition is also a similar sort. And finally, National Library of Science just says schizophrenia is a serious brain illness. So as compared to this, schizophrenia in OS is currently primitive. So because we can define given mental disease ontology, we can define a mental disease only when we can know and define the material basis of that mental disease. But the material basis of that mental disease, but the material basis of schizophrenia yet to be specified fully. So the future science tells us, I expect. So that's why it's in OS schizophrenia, the term schizophrenia has no textual definition, but instead OS gives a set of logical definitions of schizophrenia. So that's why in OS OS's conception of schizophrenia is compatible with existing various definitions of schizophrenia. Now let us focus on reduction processes such as gray matter volume reduction process, synapse quantity reduction process, and white matter volume reduction process. Now, so these kind of reduction processes are, so to speak, the neurological manifestations of schizophrenia. And to speak of a reduction process, we need to speak of a change. And to talk about the change, we need to talk about the temporal interval, which can be defined as the one-dimensional temporal region without no session. So that's why in OS so roughly speaking, there's a one-to-one correspondence between a reduction process such as white matter reduction process and its related temporal interval. Now, hallucinations, delusions are the famous striking features, or in our term, manifestations of schizophrenia. And OS says hallucination and delusions are special kinds of cognitive representation that is non-referring cognitive representation, which means cognitive representation, so which are intended to be about something in reality, but after which fails to be about anything in reality. So let me begin by explaining hallucination and after that delusion. Now, So let's consider hallucination. So suppose that I see a pink elephant in this room. Now, then there's some cognitive representation which relates to my cognitive system. So this cognitive representation is intended to be about something in reality. So it's about elephantness and pinkness and this roomness. But after it fails to be about anything in reality, because as a matter of fact, there is no pink elephant in this room. So that's why then, but still, my representation experience.
Just hit close.
Yeah.
And I apologize.
It is experienced as if there were pink elephant in this room. So that's why OS defines hallucination as in this way. Now the definition of a delusion is a little more complicated. Now the part A of the definition of a delusion aims to associate a delusion with belief, because many science articles says a delusion is some kind of false belief. Now, so mental functioning ontology says belief is a mental distortion, but it gives no official definition of belief. So OS gives a very broad definition of belief, and the part and OS is trying to associate delusion with belief via a belief realization mental process, that is the mental process that realizes belief. Then the part B of the definition is trying to separate a delusion from a merely strong belief. That's why the part B use the word pathological. Then, as I told you, the material basis of schizophrenia is yet to be specified fully, but given the current scientific findings, OS says schizophrenia disorder has as part some cortex and synapse, and cerebral cortex is a part of the brain, and it is said that our ability to think and plan is strongly correlated to with this cerebral cortex. Now, then, so OS defines pathological schizophrenia process in terms of the schizophrenia disorder. Then, so OS says pathological schizophrenia process has as part some perception and thinking. And notice that perception and thinking comes from the mental functioning ontology. So mental MFO defines perception and thinking as mental processes. So in this respect, OS adheres to the principle of reuse. And obviously, perception and thinking are strongly related to schizophrenia. Now, you might think that emotions should be also part of pathological schizophrenia process, but the latest scientific findings says emotional experience is intact with people schizophrenia. Then, but this paper says emotional regulation is tagged in people with schizophrenia, but in this paper, the distinction between emotional experience and emotional regulation is pretty ambiguous. So that's why currently OS is suspending judgment about emotion. It is silent on emotions. Now, so in the biomedical ontology research, ontological analysis of disease in general has been heatedly discussed. So last year in the journal Applied Ontology, there was one paper was published on the which aims to propose another definition of mental disease than Ogms's definition disease as a disposition. Then in this paper, Robert and Dr. Mizoguchi, this is a picture of Dr. Mizoguchi, they criticize Ogms's definition of disease. So let's look at it because it's worthwhile. Now, they raise two worries about Ogms's definition of a disease as a disposition. So first, they say disease as a disposition may fail to capture what they call the concrete biomedical reality practitioners encounter on a daily basis. So they question, for instance, they question how dispositions are detected when they are not manifested. So this is the first worry. The second worry is that in biomedicine, the word disposition or predisposition are widely used, but they say that does not mean that the notion of a disposition captures best the notion, a general scientific view of a disease. So then conclude that some diseases may be accurately characterized as disposition, but not necessarily all. So here are possible replies. So Ogms's definition of disease as a dispositions are ontological analysis of disease, but not a conceptual analysis of disease. So then, in giving an ontological analysis of disease, I think we need to care less about domain experts' intuitions about disease. And moreover, if an ontological analysis of disease fits well with a domain experts' intuition about disease, then it would be pretty hard to judge what kind of domain experts' intuition an ontological analysis of disease should fit well with, because I imagine the concept of disease varies greatly from one biomedical practitioner's intuition to another practitioner's intuition. Now, so suppose that intuitions, domain experts' intuitions matter, but I think Ogms's definition, conception of disease as a disposition has some epistemic virtues. So let's suppose that some of my DNA sequences deviate so greatly from the standard ones that my DNA sequences count as clinical abnormal. Then suppose also that I am told that I'm very likely to have genetically inherited diabetes in the next 30 years, for instance. Now, I may be afraid of that. I may be worried about that. But since I cannot be afraid about non-existent things, I think it's reasonable to think that diabetes as a disease as a disposition already exists in my body, but I'm afraid of the realization of that diabetes as a disease as a disposition. That's first. That's one possible reply to the first worry. Then the second worry. So I do not think that dispositional talk in biomedicine is a primary motivation for Ogms's definition as a disposition. So let's consider the Robert and Mizoguchi's alternatives. So they say, to put it in from a BFO perspective, they say disease is a specifically dependent continuum, and a disease is a causal notion. So in short, they say a disease is a causal property. Now, given therefore, if a disease is a causal property, then most reasonably a disease falls into a dispositional category. So therefore, I think given therefore disease as a disposition is quite plausible. Now let me evaluate OS. The good point of OS is that it's strong top-down approach to schizophrenia. That is, OS is based precisely on these existing reliable ontologies such as PF and OGMs, and I hope it can be qualified as a member of open biomedical ontologies. But on the other hand, the first point is its weak bottom-up approach to schizophrenia. Since I myself not a domain expert, I have had a hard time choosing which term should be included in OS. For instance, DSM-5 gives various subtypes of delusions, such as erotomanic delusion and semantic delusions, but OS is sustaining these various subtypes of delusions. Now, to a conclusion. So I think so OS is currently under active construction. Further development of OS include further bottom-up approaches. So it needs collaboration with domain experts, and since mental disease is supposed to be strongly correlated with some kind of brain disease, it will be good to elucidate the relation between OS and the existing ontology of that is neurological disease ontology, and also OS is based on the existing ontologies. Then the progress of OS should be done with these should be done with the progress of these relevant related ontologies. Yeah, this is the end.
Questions?
So when I hallucinate about the pink elephant in the room, is my hallucination about a portion of reality?
No.
So that's going to be a problem for you, because right now non-referring cognitive representations are going to be representations which are going to have to be about a portion of reality.
No, let me put this way. To put it precisely, so suppose that I see a pink elephant in this room, then there exists some cognitive representation that relates to my cognitive system. That cognitive representation is about elephantness and pinkness, and this room, but it fails to be about a state of affairs of being of a pink elephant existing in this room. Because why? Because in reality there is no pink. There is no configuration of these entities. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's slide 22.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not over.
Yeah, we were talking about replies to dispositional diseases. So, just a clarification. Were you saying that that if you have the gene for diabetes, you actually have diabetes?
No. So I'm trying to dispel epistemic worries about unrealized diseases.
Sure.
Now, so do you remember my example? Then so you cannot be afraid about non-existent things because the relation. Then, but So I am told that I'm really likely to have a some genetic inherited disease in the next 30 years. Then I'm now afraid. I'm not afraid of that, but I cannot be afraid about non-existent things. So if I'm not I'm worried about something, then there is something that I'm now worried about that. Then I think the conception of disease as a disposition gives a good picture of what's going on in this case. That is, disease. A disease already exists in your body, but you, so my idea is that if you are worried about something, there exists some entity that makes you worried. Then given almost, we could say that disease is unrealized disease already exists, and you are afraid about the realization of that realized disease.
So,
Maybe
the disease being diabetes or being your disposition to get diabetes.
say that again.
The disease here being either diabetes or your disposition to get diabetes based on your genes.
The disposition to get diabetes. No, this disease is a disposition.
So let me just explain that Ogham distinguishes between those dispositions which are diseases and those dispositions which are dispositions to diseases, which are dispositions to dispositions.
Sure.
So genetic predispositions are not diseases.
Okay.
But you can be afraid of getting a disease because you have discovered that you have a genetic predisposition.
Okay.
But I
No.
Oh, essentially, so I thought I understood what you were saying about delusions until you responded to Neil. Could I ask the same question he asked, but instead of a pink elephant, could you explain it for delusions?
A delusion. Wait.
Basically, what's the delusion about?
In the pink.
Or whatever would count as a delusion. How would you explain, what is a delusion going to be about?
Could you go back to your slide?
Yeah. Okay. What is delusion about? For instance, so suppose that my friend's wife, say Hannah loves me. So then well, this cognitive. So imagine the sentence, Hannah loves me. Hannah loves Fumiaki. Then now this.
Is she deluded or are you?
I'm deluded. So then this representation is this. So this is about Hannah. This is about Fumiaki. Then this is about the relation loving, but it failed to be about a portion of reality because there's no state of affairs of Hannah's loving Fumiaki. Then
She likes you, okay?
But this is just a non-referring cognitive representation. Then it should so then delusion is then it has something to do with the realization process, the mental process which realizes belief, and also but that's not enough. But it may be just a strong misbelief. That's why it should be a pathological, unusual conflict with some good evidence about the truth of Hannah's failing to love me.
One more question. So I have the question which relates to the slide. I'll find it quickly myself, I think. Yeah, here.
Yeah, right.
So I think this is a problem with OWL, and I don't know whether Neil or John can help here, but it is not the case that every pathological schizophrenia process has part-some perception, because you might have a schizophrenia process with your eyes closed, and so there are some pathological schizophrenia processes which have perceptual parts and others. So you can't include that as an axiom for all pathological schizophrenia processes. So you need to have in fact, maybe for all kinds of mental processes, you would need to have a subtype. So I just don't know the correct way of dealing with that. As far as I understand it, it's hard to do optionality in OWL.
Right.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah.
Again, this could be solved with a classification of pattern inside the law. So, final conclusion, regardless of whether they're classified as processes or generally or occurrence, the law needs to be changed. Just no matter what, it needs to fit our ontology, because our ontology is great. Well, no, it needs to be more rigorously applied and defined, preferably with an eye to metaphysics and ontology. I still favor the generally dependent continuant as a proper classification, mostly for the universality issue. And that's it. Thank you.
So I want to make two important points. First of all, phenomenology became French.
Okay.
But the very early phenomenologists, particularly Husserl, who wrote a work called Logical Investigations, in which the term formal ontology was first used, that they were still very good. And the basic formal ontology is actually inspired by Husserl and by the work of one of his greatest students, who was Polish, a man called Roman Ingarden, who was an expert on the ontology of art and wrote a book including a long treatment of the ontology of film, which you should look at. Now, the second point I wanted to make relates to slide 26. Can you go back to 26?
Sure.
26.
Oh, sorry.
So, if the film is a generically dependent continuum, which I think is correct,
Sure.
then it doesn't have instantiations because generically dependent continuants are themselves instances.
Okay.
There is just one The Dark Knight. There is just one
Okay.
Third Man, and so on. What they get is concretizations.
Okay.
And like a literary work, a film can be concretized in somebody's head when they watch it or read it. But the main way in which films are concretized is by being screened.
Sure.
So what instantiates a film is a screening,
Okay.
which is a process, right? Like all concretizations of films. So that's why it's tempting to think of a film as a process, because all its concretizations are processes.
Okay.
Now, I think that's all I wanted to say. So, someone else want to have a question?
And so something else you might think about is
Sure.
analogous to this is the staging of a play. That's
Right.
Right. It could be the script could be similarly concretized in some book script, but the actual play itself is actually concretized in the playing out of it, which is a whole set of processes. And similarly for like the reading of a poem, something which can be read multiple times and can be concretized in particular readings. I think of these as analogous to the particular screenings of the document.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
Anyone? Yep.
Maybe one other note of encouragement. So there's like a lot of linked data on movies,
Right.
and there are a lot of ontologies of movies, and they all kind of suck. So if you could do a good job of doing a buffo ontology of movies, it could be helpful for certain purposes.
Interesting.
There's a lot of that information out, and the ontologies tend to be really flat. And so if they have persons, then actors are persons, right? They don't make
Which
these
is not right.
right, which is not correct. So anyway, if you could do a good job here with this, then there could be all kinds of broader ways in which that's applicable, and the internet could pick it up and run with it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out as a way to expand the project.
And in the future, of course, no film actors will be present because they'll all be
Digital.
digital.
Yes.
All right, so this is the end of the class. I have just one or two things to say. First of all, thank you very much for your attention. I enjoyed it. Secondly, fill in the form, those of you who are doing this for credit, if you haven't done so already. Thirdly, there are always opportunities for people to do work in ontology. So if you're interested in this stuff, then you should find ways of continuing to pursue work along these lines. And I'm always willing to help you identify possibilities in the future. So, and any questions you have about any of the topics we've discussed, you can always come back to me. And next semester, we're doing a course which should not overlap with this on biomedical ontology, which will be quite enlightening.
He's very excited about that prospect.
But you're leaving, aren't you?
I'll tell you.
All right, any questions?
Papers are due by midnight?
Midnight tonight. And you lose 1% for every hour.
That's possible every minute.
And can you stay behind just for a couple of minutes? And can you stay behind? And I think you and I need to talk in any case. So I'll deal with them very quickly. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we'll avoid the insurance. Yeah.
No, I just.
Thank you very much.